Have you ever wondered about this? Why did European royal families continue practicing close-kin marriages for centuries, even though they clearly knew it could result in deformed offspring and hereditary diseases like hemophilia? Why has the idea of blue blood nobility endured for thousands of years, becoming the ultimate symbol of class distinction? And why, deep in our bones, do humans still feel an inexplicable sense of awe toward royalty and nobility, even in an age that claims equality? Some say it's greed for power, a necessity of rule. But what if I told you that behind all of this lies a secret that spans across the stars? That the so-called blue-blooded nobles aren't human at all? They are semi-silicon-based life forms from a higher dimensional planet. Reptilian beings hiding beneath human disguise. And that so-called blue blood isn't a symbol of nobility at all, but a desperate lifeline that allows them to survive within Earth's carbon-based prison. Today, we're going to tear away this thousand-year-old disguise and talk about the survival crisis of these reptilian beings on Earth. You'll come to realize that they are not all-powerful invaders, but rather a group of pitiful creatures trapped in a carbon-based world, sustaining their lives through blood consumption. And we humans? Perhaps we've already been domesticated, reduced to nothing more than their mobile blood banks. When people think of reptilians, the first impression is often that they are omnipotent, controlling the world's power and wealth, hiding behind the scenes to manipulate the course of human history, even capable of shape-shifting and perfectly mimicking human appearance. But if they were truly that powerful, why wouldn't they simply take over Earth directly? Why hide in the shadows? The answer is actually quite simple. They are weak, so weak that they can't even properly digest Earth's food. So weak that they risk exposing their true form at any moment, facing total genetic collapse. First, we need to establish a core premise. Reptilians are not carbon-based organisms. They are advanced semi-silicon-based life forms. On their home planet, the environment is dominated by silicon elements. Their physical structure and digestive systems are perfectly adapted to a silicon-based ecosystem, just as the human body is designed for Earth's carbon-based environment. We rely on carbohydrates and proteins for energy, and oxygen to sustain life. Reptilians, on the other hand, depend on the circulation of silicon elements to survive. Earth is a paradise for carbon-based life. Everything around us, whether it's grains like rice and wheat, cooking oils, meat and vegetables, or fruits, eggs, and dairy, has a core composition of carbohydrates, proteins, and fats. These are the fundamental energy sources that sustain carbon-based organisms. But for semi-silicon-based reptilian beings, these carbon-based foods not only fail to provide energy, they actually trigger a violent silicon-carbon rejection reaction. This rejection response is hundreds of times more intense than a human allergic reaction. If they accidentally consume even a single bite of human food, their digestive system initiates a self-defense mechanism, attempting to expel these carbon-based toxins from the body. During this process, they experience extreme pain. Their skin develops scale-like protrusions, and in severe cases, it can even cause minor fractures in their genetic chain. The bodies of these reptilian beings are like highly precise silicon-based machines, while Earth's carbon-based environment is like a magnetic field filled with impurities, constantly interfering with their operation. To prevent this machine from completely breaking down, they must find a patch that can substitute for silicon elements and ease the rejection response. That patch is what we call blue blood. Here we need to break a common misconception. Reptilian blue blood is not a metaphor or a symbol. It is a real physiological trait. Just like horseshoe crabs on Earth, whose blood appears blue due to a high concentration of copper ions, reptilian blood also contains extremely high levels of copper ions, dozens of times higher than that of horseshoe crabs. This is the origin of their blue blood, and this copper ion-rich blue blood is their only lifeline in Earth's carbon-based world. To understand the importance of blue blood to reptilian beings, we first need to answer a key question: why copper ions? Among all the elements on Earth, why are copper ions the only substance that can serve as their life-sustaining resource? The answer lies in the logic of silicon-carbon translation. The core of a reptilian body is a silicon-based structure, while Earth's environment is carbon-based. The compatibility between silicon and carbon is extremely poor, like software designed for Windows that cannot run properly on a Mac system. Copper ions, however, are the only element that can act as a bridge between silicon and carbon. They function as a biochemical translation medium, converting small amounts of usable energy from Earth's environment into the silicon-based energy required by reptilian bodies, while also mitigating the damage caused by the silicon-carbon rejection reaction. We can think of a reptilian body as a silicon-based container and blue blood as a protective membrane, lining the inner walls of that container. This membrane, composed of highly concentrated copper ions, prevents carbon-based substances from the environment from penetrating into the silicon-based core, thereby avoiding genetic chain fractures and total bodily collapse. Once this protective membrane is damaged, meaning the concentration of copper ions becomes insufficient, the reptilian body begins to exhibit a series of symptoms that reveal its true form. First comes iris splitting. Their pupils shift from the round shape of humans to the vertical slit of a reptile. Next is skin keratinization. Areas like the palms and neck become rough, developing fine scale-like textures. Finally, bodily functions begin to fail, with symptoms such as fatigue, excessive drowsiness, and difficulty breathing, much like the terminal stage of a human fatal illness, ultimately leading to complete genetic collapse, reducing the body to a pool of silicon-based sludge. But here's the problem. Copper ions are not abundant in Earth's environment, and they are dispersed across various ores and soils, making them impossible for reptilian beings to directly absorb. More importantly, their silicon-based digestive systems cannot convert Earth's copper ions into the blue blood components their bodies require. As a result, they need a more efficient and direct way to obtain high concentrations of copper ions. So they came up with a solution. Through bloodlines, they would lock in the blue blood gene, ensuring that their offspring are born with naturally high concentrations of copper ion-rich blood. This method gave rise to one of the most bizarre phenomena in human history: noble inbreeding. Many people believe that inbreeding among European royal families was meant to preserve concentrated power, to prevent noble bloodlines from being diluted. But the truth is far more unsettling than we imagine. Their inbreeding was not about power at all. It was about survival. It was a genetic defense war that lasted for thousands of years. We can understand it this way. The reptilian blue blood gene is like a rare gene. Only through close kin reproduction can its purity be preserved to the greatest extent, preventing it from being diluted by human carbon-based genes. If they were to intermarry with ordinary humans, their offspring's blue blood gene would weaken, the concentration of copper ions would drop significantly, and they would no longer be able to maintain their human disguise, ultimately exposing their true form and facing death. When it comes to inbreeding, the most representative example is the Habsburg family of Europe. This dynasty ruled for over 600 years, yet due to prolonged inbreeding, it left behind a distinctive after effect: the Habsburg jaw. Few people ever ask, why did the Habsburg family continue inbreeding for centuries, even though they clearly knew it could result in deformed offspring and hereditary diseases like hemophilia? Were they really so foolish that they would sacrifice their own descendants for the sake of power? Let's overturn a common assumption. The so-called Habsburg jaw is not a typical genetic deformity, but rather an overflow of rejection caused by reptilian silicon-based genes forcibly adapting to a human carbon-based body. And what we call hemophilia is not merely a standard genetic disease, but a disorder of blood clotting caused by the conflict between blue blood genes and human genes. Because the core genetic structure of reptilian beings is silicon-based, their human disguise is achieved through genetic mimicry, embedding their silicon-based genes into human carbon-based genes to produce human-like appearance, voice, and physical form. But this genetic mimicry is extremely fragile. Once too many human carbon-based genes are introduced, their silicon-based genes become diluted, the copper ion concentration in their blue blood decreases, and symptoms of revealing their true form begin to appear. Inbreeding, therefore, is the only method they devised to lock in the blue blood gene. There is also a crucial detail here. The so-called blue-blooded nobility of European royal families often had pale skin with prominent veins, giving the appearance of blue blood flowing beneath the surface. Many assume this is simply because nobles lived in luxury and avoided the sun, resulting in pale skin. But the truth is different. Their pallor comes from the inability of a silicon-based body to efficiently utilize oxygen, leading to chronic oxygen deficiency. The visibly blue veins, on the other hand, are due to the high concentration of copper ions in their blood, which shows through their pale skin. Reptilian beings deliberately packaged this biological flaw as a symbol of nobility. They told humans that pale skin and visible blue blood were divine privileges, marks of higher status. And over thousands of years of conditioning, humans came to believe this lie, mistaking this pathology for nobility. This genetic defense war has lasted for thousands of years. Through inbreeding, reptilian beings locked in the blue blood gene maintained their human disguise and successfully domesticated humanity into obedient subjects who fear and submit to them. The tool they used to domesticate humanity was psychological manipulation. Although reptilian beings were physically weak due to the silicon-carbon rejection reaction, their essence remained that of advanced life forms from a higher dimensional planet. Their intelligence and abilities far exceeded those of humans. When they arrived on Earth and realized they could not directly conquer humans through large-scale warfare, they devised a more efficient strategy: psychological conditioning. Their logic of domestication was simple: repackage their biological flaws as divine privileges and twist humanity's primal fear of cold-blooded reptiles into awe and obedience toward nobility. We all know that humans' ancestors in primitive societies had an innate fear of cold-blooded reptiles: snakes, lizards, crocodiles. These animals were cold and fierce, and among early humans' main natural enemies. This fear became embedded in human genetics and passed down through generations. The reptilian beings exploited this primal fear to begin their psychological conditioning. First, they packaged their own blue blood as a sacred symbol. They told humans that blue blood was the blood of the gods. Those who possessed blue blood were descendants of the divine, endowed with supreme power and born rulers. Humans with red blood, on the other hand, were ordinary people, naturally meant to submit to the blue-blooded nobility. Next, they reinforced this class divide through religion, law, and culture. In medieval Europe, religion became a key tool for reptilian domestication of humans. They supported the church, which promoted the idea of the divine right of kings, teaching that noble authority was granted by God, and that resisting nobility was defying God and would be punished. The higher ranks of the church were, in many cases, also reptilian beings in disguise. Additionally, they used art and literature to portray the blue-blooded nobility as elegant, noble, and sacred. For example, in medieval oil paintings, nobles were depicted wearing lavish clothing, with pale skin and commanding gazes, while ordinary humans wore tattered clothes, had darker skin, and humble eyes looking up to the nobles. This cultural conditioning lasted for thousands of years, gradually forming a fixed mindset. Blue-blooded nobility is superior, red-blooded humans are inferior, and submission to the nobility is natural. Even more disturbingly, they embedded this conditioning into humanity's cultural DNA. Even after feudal dynasties collapsed and aristocratic systems were abolished, this genetic reverence for nobility remained. Today, people still feel admiration and awe for elite families and prestigious lineages. We still tend to believe that those born into privilege are more capable, more deserving of power and wealth than ordinary people. This is the brilliance of the reptilian beings. They did not conquer humanity with force, but with psychological manipulation, domesticating humans so that they would submit willingly. We believe we are free, that we have escaped the chains of feudal rule, but in reality we are still being controlled by reptilian beings, still bowing to them.